Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Gaming the System, the podcast where three intersectional feminists examine gaming and games through a feminist lens. Today I am your host Matt, and I'm joined by my friends Alex and Jem. Before we get started, if you want to support us, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamingthesystem for some exclusive content, or you can send us a one-off donation via PayPal to our email address wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com.
What we'll do now is we'll swap on to our news stories.
Cool.
So, 2024, we've been looking at the news in a more specific way than we have done in the past. And there is some good stuff and some bad stuff going on. So, I think we'll start with the good stuff again. A game that I finished recently, as I've talked about quite a lot, Alien Isolation. On the 10-year anniversary, the studio announced that they're doing a sequel.
Ooh.
There's going to be an Alien Isolation Part 2. And that is really exciting to me because they took what Alien could be in terms of a game and absolutely smashed it out of the park. There was no bullshit, no fluff with it. It was just the ultimate Alien gaming experience. And every time I look at franchises that have had a really good job done with them, like with Baldur's Gate and God of War, and then you take those for granted now that they've been released. You think, well, obviously it was always going to be incredible. Whereas you look to the side and you see Suicide Squad and Call of Duty and Dragon Age, and you go, oh no, these studios could have gone in the same direction as Baldur's Gate and God of War. They could have gone off into the stratosphere, but then they've been taken over by corporate morons who just want the microtransaction money. And I have high hopes for Alien 2 and the appreciation for the franchises that have continued to value us as gamers, because it just feels awful when they just clearly think, oh, he's just another wallet. That game is just another wallet that we want to drain. We want to manipulate into giving us more money, rather than going, oh, we're making an awesome product and selling it to you.
Speaking of Alien, actually, I watched an interesting short just recently. I think it's from Alana Pierce's podcast, Play, Watch, Listen, where she speaks to, among other people, game composer Austin Wintory, who's one of my favourite game composers. And they were talking about Alien Isolation and how there was a bug with the music. When you were hiding, it would go all intense and stuff, like by mistake, and so you'd be constantly worried about where the alien was, and it would trick you into thinking that it was still around even though it had gone away. And they decided, the developers, that was so terrifying that they'd just leave it and let it do that, so that everyone would get really scared. And I just thought that was really funny.
The sound design is excellent, and
Yeah.
I played, because I was streaming it, I played with headphones, and I don't always play with headphones, and you'd think that playing a terrifying game with headphones on would make it scarier. It actually made it easier, because the alien actually has very distinctive sounds that it makes. It makes a certain sound when it flies, when it goes off into a vent, and when you hear that, you go, oh, I can go and have a look around. And it has quite heavy footsteps when it's nearby. So the sound design actually helps. But there are multiple times where I remember going, the music needs to calm the fuck down.
Yeah. Yeah.
The music is...
Well, it might be a bug, Matt, that they left in.
Just going, just calm down, all right? Yeah, so yeah, that was, it could be better. And have either of you seen Alien Romulus, the new film?
No.
Oh, it's great. Absolutely brilliant. Really, really harkens back to the original one, and just, yeah. lots of awesome alien stuff going on at the moment. Alex, have you got a good news story?
Do I have any good news stories? That's a good question. I think for me, this one is probably a good one. And you could take it both ways, and that's that Assassin's Creed Shadows has been delayed. It was due to be released around about now, and they've delayed it till next year. And I always think that's a positive thing in some ways, because it means that they want to get, or at least looking positively, they want to get the most out of the development and make sure that it's going to be a better game at launch for players than it would have been if it had been rushed out in the autumn. But yeah, you could take it both ways, I suppose. I think it is basically nearly ready, but essentially the exciting thing about it also is that it's like a third era for the Assassin's Creed franchise. That's how they're marketing it anyway. That they've had the original Ezio and Desmond storyline, and then they had sort of the middle era, and then they've had the three trilogy, the most recent set, so Origins, Odyssey and Valhalla. The first two were great, the third one not so much, and I think they're hoping that this one will kind of be a sort of soft launch into a new set of Assassin's Creeds that are going to be hopefully better than the last. And I think it'll be interesting to see what direction they take it, because they definitely reflect what they feel is most popular at the time, you know, moving so heavily into RPG with the last three, where it had never been like that before. It was very linear before. There was no like level system. There was no way to sort of do different things with your weapons or anything like that. And now, and skills as well. That was never a component in the early Assassin's Creed. Not so much anyway. So it'd be interesting to see what they do with this new one, and the setting for it is something that a lot of Assassin's Creed fans have been looking for a very long time, and that's Japan, feudal Japan, which looks very cool. And again, they've got two protagonists. I can't remember the names. There's a woman and a man though. One of them is based on Yasuke, who was a black samurai, although I'm not sure he was actually a samurai. There's been lots of contention about whether that's right or not, and some people getting very angry about it. And then the female character, I want to say she's a shinobi, but that could be completely wrong. It's like a type of ninja, but not a ninja. I'm sorry, I'm completely butchering my explanation, but it's very exciting and I'm quite looking forward to it. So in a way, I see the delay as a positive, because hopefully it'll mean they can perfect any niggles and just get the best game ready for launch, whenever that will be.
Every time a game is delayed is a good thing for the most part,
Yeah.
because the more time game developers has, it means that they have more time to do quality testing, and it also means that there isn't as much crunch. And that has to be one of the biggest priorities for unions, is making it completely impossible for there to be crunch periods, to have that nothing is more important than not having a crunch. So that was a good sign. And I have never not really enjoyed an Assassin's Creed game. It's come out every year or two for nearly 15 years now, and I've really enjoyed every single one. And I have played the last three, like almost every single bit of content out of them, and enjoyed them all the way through. The only slight disappointment was Assassin's Creed Mirage, because that was a bloody DLC.
I tried that and I didn't enjoy it.
It was a DLC for Valhalla, and they sold it as a completely new game without changing anything. But they did 3 massive expansions for Valhalla. They should have just done, we've done one more while we're working on this. And if they'd done that, then it would have been, I would have viewed it completely differently, because that's a little bit disappointing. But I don't expect the absolute game changing, it's going to be the best game ever, but it's going to be fun, it's going to be enjoyable. And whether it's going to be, now we've had Ghost of Tsushima, and
It's true, yeah.
that is as Assassin's Creed-ish a game can be without being an Assassin's Creed game.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, I don't know the level of innovation that Ubisoft has in it anymore, because it's just too big of a company, and
Yeah.
there's so many different like areas, and there have been so many flops that they've done over the last few years of different IPs. But Assassin's Creed has been an old faithful, and so I have my hopes are positive for that. So that's good. Jen, a positive news story.
Yeah, so I think I shared this one with you guys earlier this week. I heard some people on the radio actually talking about this, and then a story popped up in my feed. So back in 2020, when we were all in lockdown, these two actors who weren't obviously able to work because of lockdown were gaming together, and they were playing Grand Theft Auto online, and they came up with the idea to create a an online show, like a performance in within the GTA
That's so
world.
funny.
And they wanted to perform Hamlet. And they apparently did do some performances where they basically were in it's like one of the big sort of arenas, the Vinewood
Yeah,
Bowl
that's it.
amphitheater. They basically like take that over and then
Wow.
perform their play in there. They ended up doing it all over, all throughout the game, I think, in the end. But they had audiences come and watch, and they basically would say to them, "Please don't kill each other.
Yeah.
Please just enjoy the show. Please, you can do whatever you like, but don't kill the actors." And that there's been basically a documentary made of their experience,
Wow.
and the person who's made the documentary is a woman, which is just awesome, from our perspective. So she came in and she's worked with these guys to like pull together in-game footage. The whole documentary is set in the game, and although you don't see their performance of Hamlet, you see clips of it, but it's all about their experience of going on this journey together, and exploring this amazing concept. And I've been to a few sort of in-game performances. World of Warcraft used to do them periodically, where they'd have mini celebrities or whatever come and do a gig, and it was just, you could never get onto the server. Everything was always backed up. And I know that my daughter has attended a performance in I think probably Fortnite or maybe Overwatch,
Wow.
but one of the two. And so there's all sorts of things where that people do performances, but that's usually supported by the game makers, whereas this was just two individual people wanting to use the environment as their stage. And for me, I think it's really interesting that it's Hamlet, because the quote, "All the world's a stage," it comes from Hamlet, comes from Shakespeare. And of course, to me, one of the most exciting things about these multiplayer environments is that they provide a stage and a set of props and all sorts of things that people can use to recreate these stories in. And I just think it's just really lovely. And I mean, it got 5 stars from the Guardian. It is going down really well, so I would absolutely recommend that you check it out. I'm definitely gonna have a watch. It's apparently going to be in the cinemas from the 6th of December, so it should
Oh,
be out
awesome.
now
Yeah.
already. But I expect that most of us will probably have to wait for it to come onto a streaming service near you, or YouTube or whatever. But yes, it's called uh, Grand Theft Hamlet. That's what it's called. So yeah.
That's so good. It's one of the
Very
awesome
cool.
things about, it's not necessarily seizing the means of production. but having all the streaming services counts as that. Using the brilliance of the average person is fucking off the charts.
Yeah.
The fact that there are so many ways for that to be expressed now that's just an awesome thing. People doing awesome things with the tools that they've got. There is a trend of actors having YouTube channels and Twitch channels, and they're doing really well. And that's always wonderful to see, because one, it raises like their demand for people to want them to work, and it also gives them leverage in terms of when they're negotiating with people they want to work with. They go, I've got an audience over here that I can sit and I can play Baldur's Gate 3 with my girlfriend and we'll make a load of money, and then I go to do Comic-Cons and sign things. So if you want me to do your game, we have to have a good partnership. So that's an awesome thing. My second and third one, so I'll do this in two halves. The IOI studio, who make the Hitman games. Hitman is the most important game in my life. I played that for 1,000 hours this year. It's the foundation of my gaming infrastructure. And this has been a massive year of layoffs throughout the industry. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of game workers being just cut loose by studios in a time where profits are through the roof and CEO pays is out of control. The CEO of Microsoft got a 65% pay increase from 30 million to 70 million, or somewhere around that. But IOA, earlier on in the year, when the first big couple of thousand people were getting laid off, they put out a post on all their social media, and it's still up. It says, "We are saddened to hear that the continuous layoffs in the games industry. If you've been affected and are looking for a new challenge, we're hiring across all teams to work on both. They're making the next a James Bond game and a fantasy game as well. We offer hybrid work setup and competitive relocation packages for moves to either of our 5 studios." So when so many studios are kicking people out for personal profit, this awesome studio that is the most dear to my heart is going, we've got loads of space over here, come and join us. And so that's a beautiful thing that's happened. And then earlier on this month only, they had at some point in the last year or so, they had 3 accessibility consultants come and do seminars there, for 3-hour-long seminars, and they've just released them on YouTube, those 3 seminars.
Cool.
So there's 3 hours worth of accessibility consultants. It's a Q&A, so it was them interacting with the staff of IOI themselves, and one of them was Stephen
Spond.
Say again.
Stephen Spond.
Yes,
Spond.
I think that was him.
Yeah.
I'll put a link in the description of the video. At any rate, 3
That's
different
very cool.
accessibility consultants talking about different kinds of things, and that's just so exciting to see that that's the direction that this studio that I love so much is going. They're going, okay, welcoming people who have been laid off, prioritizing accessibility enough to have some seminars about it, then going, these seminars are good enough that we're going to release them, and presumably they're going to be paying the accessibility consultants more to release it as well. So that's just a heartwarming pair of things that's happened this year with them.
Yeah.
Alex, another positive story?
I don't have one, I'm afraid.
You don't?
But no, it was great to hear about your one. That's really lovely. And I'll definitely check out the YouTube video, because I've been following Stephen on Twitter. There's a couple of Steves, I think, on Twitter. One of them is visually impaired, and I'm not sure about the other one, but they have like a tube that comes out of here. Um, but anyway, they both work in gaming, and they're like really well regarded in terms of their viewpoints and their knowledge and experience on accessibility in gaming. And yeah, so it's really positive to hear that they're getting involved with that kind of work as well. But yeah, and I do have the general negative one is only the one, which is just like you mentioned, the number of layoffs this year. And it was very recent that some more have happened just earlier this month, right before Christmas, which is, a bummer for everybody. But yeah, I don't know how long it's going to continue for. There's talk of it continuing for at least another year. Just as the impact of like everyone getting into gaming during the pandemic is now everyone's dropping off again because we've all gone back to normal. So now the industry's having to manage that. So hopefully there'll be more and more studios like IO who are able to make space for more people to join them. But it'll be interesting to watch what direction the industry is going to take. I was watching another episode of Play, Watch, Listen actually earlier this week, and they were talking about what might happen in the future, and they said there'll probably be something to shake the industry up because there's usually like highs and lows within, they tend to go in cycles, and whether that's a new console or a new type of gaming genre or just something else different that's going to be happening soon to hopefully take the industry in a new direction, because I think games as live service is definitely not going well as some people were hoping, and it's not something that interests me. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, it'll be interesting to keep an eye on how things are going to go.
Yeah,
I think.
Go ahead, Jem.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's quite interesting when people talk about the life cycles of industries, because that implies that hooks into this idea that there's a sort of natural order and a natural balance, and that underpins quite a lot of the really dodgy economics out there. Things like, oh well, eventually demand and oh my God, what's the supply and demand will balance themselves out like it's some kind of natural process, which
Yes.
it isn't. And I think, that is always the risk, that people are just waiting for something to happen because it always has in the past, but doesn't mean it will. And I think, the industry has to start thinking sensibly about how it's going to tackle this current trend. It can't assume that something will come along. But I think it's interesting because we are all very enamored with that concept. I think it makes us feel more comfortable, the idea that everything has a natural order and it'll just balance itself out eventually. But it doesn't really, because there are so many other factors at play that there is, even if it was a natural, I mean, even in the natural world, that doesn't happen. There's plenty of scenarios where, animals have killed themselves into extinction, or, plants have just died out or whatever. So I think it's interesting, but yeah, I think you're right. It is a negative, it is a worrying trend in the industry. But I'm going to talk about a cautiously optimistic story, which is that people are taking a little bit more seriously the impact of gaming on children, and that we need to think about it, and that we might need to legislate it. They're also considering the impact of sort of social media as well. So Australia has just made a law that you can't use social media under the age of 16, which is quite high, because I think mostly it's around 13 is when most people will let sort of kids on. But I think it's interesting. I had a conversation with my daughter about it and asked what she thought about it, and it was interesting that she's broadly supportive of the idea actually, because I think there is an understanding that the younger users are not necessarily able to protect themselves from the various things that they're being exposed to in these online spaces. I think it's a difficult one because we need to prepare our children for the world that they're moving into. So simply wrapping kids in cotton wool until they're 16 and then expecting them to be able to safely navigate the internet is is also a risk, because it's it it isn't safe out there to you do have to be cautious, just like you do crossing the road. You're not going to die every time you cross the road, but you do need to know a set of rules and a set of safeties in order to do it without dying or without injuring yourself. And I think that's what we really need to be focusing on with online gaming and social media for younger people. But I am pleased to see that, they are talking about it, that people are thinking about this as an issue. They're recognizing that there is something different for these generations who are growing up completely immersed in these spaces in a way that I certainly didn't. And I think, even you younguns were, had a gap before you entered into that sort of online gaming space. And whereas my daughter, she could have been into it straight away, right? I mean, she has been exposed to games for most of her life. We were quite strict about letting her online, and social media certainly wasn't allowed until relatively recently. So, but places like Roblox are putting in conditions for younger players, because I mean they have players as young as sort of 4 and 5, and they don't have protections in place. I mean, they have a ridiculous system of tagging conversations. So in the chat, if you say anything that they deem to be inappropriate, it gets hashed out, which they call tagging. But it's really bad, and it means that they can't actually have sensible conversations. So my daughter actually got a ban for saying the word t-shirt.
Really?
And
Why?
her and she has a friend who's Australian, so has an Australian accent, and he was talking about going to the beach, and he got banned for saying the word bitch.
Wait, it's
And
audio.
that was on audio,
Ah.
yes.
Really?
You can't use audio on Roblox unless you are over 13, and you have to actually prove that. They make you go through a process
Wow.
with your passport and stuff, so then you can use audio. But the games, you can enter any game irrespective of your age. So there are some games that are much more adult, well, not adult focused, but older topics, even things like just murder games and stuff. So things that might be scary, but anyone who's on Roblox could access them. And in at the beginning of December, Roblox made some changes to that, to say that game makers have to say whether their game is suitable, and there's some sorts of checks and balances going on. But yeah, I mean, it is a worry, absolutely, and I'm glad that people are talking about it.
Yeah.
A massive difference between because we were sort of the overlap generations between, so we experienced things the way they are now and when they were completely analog. I had a Walkman, a cassette tape Walkman, and then went to a CD one and had a TV right up there above there. I had a TV that was as big as
Yeah, a big
fucking
brick.
car
Yeah.
tire, a great big brick of a TV. And so we were, and you being a gamer, Gem, when you're a gamer, you're more clued into technology and like automatically, because you have to be. But even the most cutting edge games up until a couple of years ago, the hardware limited what was possible, and internet limited what was possible, internet speed, all the stuff on the internet. Whereas the last people like in the last 5, 6, 7 years, literally anything is possible online. You can do absolutely anything. You can do absolutely anything on your phone, on your computer, on your gaming console. The entire universe is right there, available all the time. And so that's a vulnerability and an exposure that young people, you can't just be exposed to that and trust that it will be okay. There needs to be. I think of raising a child is like you're in a harbour. You're in the parent the house, the home where it's being raised is a harbour, and you're helping them build their own ship so that they can sail off across the world. And if you make them, oh, we'll make you this comfortable little dinghy that is fine in the harbour, and then throw them out into the ocean of the internet, they're going to die very quickly. Whereas if you go, right, we're going to build this big, robust ship without we can go and have a look out there together and explore it together. But then that again comes down to fucking capitalism of going, the way that this needs to be done is parents need to go through things with their child, support their child through them. Whereas if both parents have to work and the child doesn't have that support, that's a part of the equation that just saying, right, you can't go on social media till the 16 isn't fixing. I think we'll move on to some negative stories, which we end up talking about the most. For me, what to go with first? We'll go with the paedophile competing at the Olympics.
Yeah, that one was a big one, wasn't it?
Yeah, Steven van den Velde, who is a convicted paedophile who groomed a girl on Facebook, a 13-year-old girl, when he was 21, and flew to England from the Netherlands. He flew into another fucking country, and yeah, if you want to know the full story of it, go and watch the episode that Alex and I did in it, because we went into. No, you were there, Jem, as well, because I remember the expression you pulled when I was describing some of the stuff. Yeah, horrifying, and he was allowed to compete at the Olympics. Allowed to. Last time he crossed international borders, he molested a child there. So I don't understand how another country would go, oh yeah, you can come in, especially considering the amount of racism present in countries all over the world. Who would go, there are so many people, they'd go, oh no, we don't want them here, but we want him. He's fine. He's Nordic and tall and white. He's fine. Doesn't matter what he's done. Alex, do you have a bad story?
Well, yeah, my general one, as I touched on earlier, was just the amount of layoffs this year. It's a pretty bleak picture, but and I know it's affected a lot of people across the entire world. But yeah, I mean, hopefully those people will either be able to support themselves through their own portfolios of work, whether they go freelance or maybe they've found new positions. So hopefully there are some positives springing from that. But I think some companies are probably handling it better than others. Perhaps with the amount of warning that people give for redundancies, the types of redundancy packages that people are getting. But I think some of the warning signs definitely come when smaller developers are bought out by larger companies, and then they're just eventually shut down after like 2 or 3 months. because the larger companies are all about efficiencies and cost cutting and things. So they acquire all these smaller developers and then get rid of them entirely because, you know, that's definitely a pattern that's been developing this year. So it's not a great picture in terms of the health of the industry as a whole. Again, speaking completely as a non-expert, so I don't know the first thing about the industry, but as an onlooker, as a gamer looking in, it's not giving me the most hope in terms of, you know, a healthy and happy industry at the moment.
Yeah, the only positive side of all of this is the amount of unions
Yes,
sprouting up in
that's true.
gaming workplaces.
Yeah.
And every time I hear about a new union, it goes, there's 700 quality testers, QA testers that are unionised, and go, that's the only way. There's
Yep.
nothing that cannot be done when you have a militant union with a supermajority of members. Then people, just because people have had their boot on their necks forever, they don't realise what they can have, what they're able to achieve. But hopefully we'll get there. Jen, do you have any bad stories?
I do. We did talk about this before because I think I brought it up in one of our news stories during the year, but I think it's worth another mention. And that's this, like, well, that is being called Gamergate 2. So
Yeah,
if you want
yes.
any more information, you can do a bit of a Google search for that and it'll give you some more background. But um, it's basically the idea that because games companies have been enlisting the support of inclusion experts, like, for example, there's one agency that has come up a lot in the conversation called Sweet Baby Inc, and they're brought in to look at ways that the game can improve its inclusion and its diversity, and they don't tell people what to do, but they just give advice, and it's up to the games companies whether they take that advice or not. And this is obviously, I would say, a really positive thing because they're getting experts in to talk to them about what they can do, and we're not, everyone can't know everything, so it's always good to bring on board people who know a thing or two about this sort of thing. And I think that's something that's quite close to your heart, Alex,
Yes, very
in
much.
your day job,
Yes.
and I think it's, but what we've seen is a pushback against this from the usual suspects, really, who are just complaining about the fact that it's ruining everyone's fun because people can't even, choose a decent haircut because they're all what they're calling DEI, diversity, equality, and inclusion,
Mm.
or woke, and that just getting really cross. And obviously, because he such a child,
Mm.
Elon Musk had to get involved in it, and he tweeted that DEI is killing art, and um just, like a lot of games, a lot of the big games of this year have taken this advice, and they've also taken quite a lot of flack for taking this advice. And even the ones that aren't taking any advice, who are just trying to do a good game that is, interesting to everyone and not just, white cis males, um even then they're getting, people are reviewing them and complaining, oh, it's woke gone mad. And I think I talked a few weeks ago about playing Coral Island and how I watched a review of that by this guy, and he was complaining that all the characters in it looked uh too Asian, I think he
Yeah,
was
I think I
saying.
remember
and
you
and,
saying,
and
yeah.
yeah, and they don't.
No.
And I literally think he's honestly gone into this looking for something to
Mm.
complain about from that perspective. And I think it's a shame. I think that I think calling it Gamergate 2 is perhaps disingenuous, because Gamergate 2 is a very specific and extremely acidic um argument, very intense, very aggressive. This is not that. This is a simmering thing, but it is very much a part of this concept of the culture wars. And I think I think culture wars is also a misnomer, really, because we're not fighting. There's one side that's complaining about the general shift, and as far as I'm concerned, they just kind of need to get over it and accept that things have moved on and they are part of the way things were. So yeah, so I think that's quite a bad news story, and I think it's a shame that it's happening. There's a shame that it's getting airtime, and that it's giving people a bandwagon to clamber onto. But haters gonna hate, as Taylor Swift famously said.
I think I'll bring us to a close with you've reminded me of that anti-woke game list.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That Jem brought to our attention a few weeks ago, and it's the holy grail of both what the anti-woke movement is in gaming and the world in general, but also anti-patriarchy and anti-capitalism, because it has a list of the criteria of what makes a woke game, and it is literally the bullet points of we could put that on the flag of feminism, going, they've told us this is the list of things that we're fighting against, because they've gone through over 1,000 games, and a positive thing of it is that the vast majority of them are on the woke list. So that means that we're winning. That even if it is the same people with the Gamergate 2.0, we are nearly 10 years later. Is it? It's been like over a decade, and the industry has been moving exponentially in the more diverse, more woke direction, and so that's a good sign. And this list, I'm convinced that it's thou dost protest too much, because in order to work out which of these games are woke and anti-woke, someone has to play them. And there will be people who are in those in that world, feeling trapped in that incel world and don't know how to get out. But they've got this loophole that they can. It's just like with Mormons and all the weird sexual things that they do, because that aren't technically sex. It's a loophole, and so it's a good thing. It's going in a good direction. We've got to keep an eye on it, but I'm very much looking forward to going through that list and that Steam page in the new year. Thank you both so much. This has been a fabulously fun session, and we will see. Thank you everyone for watching or listening, and hope you have a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, happy whatever it is, wherever you are, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.